My wife cheated, so I took her lover's wife on a date at their favorite restaurant. No yelling, no scene, just timing. We walked in like any other couple. 2 steps past the host stand, I saw them. Her fork stopped mid-air. His hand slid off the table. The room didn't gasp, it tightened. Then the waiter said, "Your usual, Mr. Lewis?" That line did the heavy lifting. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch a chair. I let them sit in the mess they made. If you've ever been blindsided, you know, rage burns fast. Control leaves a mark. This wasn't about getting even. It was about getting back my dignity. You're wondering how I knew, why I didn't explode, and what happened after we walked out. It started with a tiny mistake, one message on a phone I wasn't meant to see, and one rule I made for myself. Don't lose me while I'm losing her. I'll show you the beginning. Then you can decide if I went too far. If you've ever faced something like this, I'd like to hear your story. And if you want to see how mine unfolds, you know what to do. I used to know my wife by the little things, how she hummed while pouring coffee, how her laugh landed half a beat after mine. Then the little things started moving. She shifted her gym time without telling me. Her calendar filled with client dinners that never made it to the family planner on the fridge. She changed her phone password. She said it was for work security, and I nodded, because that's what you do when you want to be a good husband. At dinner, she pushed food around the plate and asked about my day without really hearing the answer. When I joked about getting older, she smiled, but it missed her eyes. Married people know that look. It's the smile you give the cashier, not your spouse. I told myself it was a busy season. Everyone gets stretched thin. But a thought I didn't invite sat down anyway, quiet and heavy. Something has shifted, and I'm the last to know. I did what most men my age do when life gets strange. I reached for routine. I cleaned the garage. I paid the bills early. I called an old friend just to talk about football. When Grace said she had a late meeting, I said, "Don't wait up," like a man who trusts his wife, because that's the man I wanted to be. I repeated the obvious reasons in my head. End of quarter pressure, new boss, messy clients. We'd been through busy seasons before. We survived layoffs and a leaky roof. Surely we could survive a calendar full of dinners. When a neighbor asked how we were doing, I said, "Good," and heard how thin it sounded. Still, I chose the comfortable lie. I told myself love means benefit of the doubt. I told myself suspicion is poison. And for a while it worked. The house stayed quiet. The routines held. But comfort can't carry weight forever. One truth kept knocking. If it's fine, why do I feel like I'm bracing? One Thursday, Grace came home late. Not midnight wild, just late enough to feel wrong in a house that usually sleeps by 10. I was in the living room pretending to read. She set her keys down carefully, like noise might wake a truth. I stood to kiss her and caught a fragrance I didn't recognize. It wasn't the perfume she wore on our anniversary or the one I bought last Christmas. It was new, bright, expensive, a little reckless. She said the restaurant had a gift shop sampler and laughed it off. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But she showered the way people shower when they want to rinse a story off, and tossed her dress into the hamper like it had done something wrong. In bed, she slept on her edge, phone tucked under her pillow. The house hummed like always. Fridge, furnace, quiet suburban night, and somehow all of it felt louder. I stared at the ceiling and thought, our life still fits, but it's tighter. The next week, I tried to outrun the feeling. I mowed the lawn in straight lines you could measure with a level. I meal prepped on Sunday like a health kick could fix a marriage. I sat in church and listened to a sermon about faithfulness and felt my jaw clench at the word. I took my ring off to clean the sink and slid it back on like evidence. I kept telling myself this is what grown men do. We hold steady. But holding steady felt like holding my breath. Grace started saying we less and I more. Her phone never left the table without her hand. She laughed at something on the screen and turned it over like it was private property. When I asked, "Everything good?" she said, "Totally," and kissed my temple, a kiss you give a child before bedtime. I smiled back, the way husbands smile when they're trying not to flinch. Truth is, I still chose to trust. It just started to feel like pretending. It happened on a Tuesday. My phone died on the drive home and I needed to call my mom. Grace was in the shower. I picked up her phone, the way married people do when the house is shared and the minutes are simple. A message slid onto the screen before I could unlock it. Can't wait to see you again, beautiful. Same hotel. The sender name sat there plain as daylight. Mark, project lead. My mouth went dry in a room I knew by heart. The TV was on mute. The dishwasher hummed. It felt like our life kept moving while I didn't. I didn't open it right away. I stared at the words until they stopped being letters and turned into a wall. Then I unlocked the phone and the wall opened. Photos, plans, jokes about a husband who would never find out. People say explosions are loud. They can also be silent. Mine was. And in that silence, something I loved cracked in a way I could hear. I told myself not to open it. Then I did. The thread wasn't a rumor. It was a map. Times, places, a rhythm two people shared when they thought the world wasn't watching. I scrolled with the kind of care you use when handling a broken glass. Slow, steady, knowing you'll get cut anyway. There were late-night check-ins and morning jokes, emoji hearts where our marriage used to live. I recognized the hotel from a conference we once attended together. That hit harder than I expected. There's a special kind of pain in seeing something familiar turned against you. I thought about our anniversary dinner there, the way she squeezed my hand in the lobby like we were still new. The messages were current, not old, not a mistake, active, breathing. I put the phone down and tried to stand, but my legs felt like the first steps after a long flight, numb, untrustworthy. I picked it back up. Knowing is brutal. Not knowing was worse. The photos weren't explicit. They didn't have to be. A smile held too long. A hand on a shoulder he had no right to touch. A mirror selfie in that hotel bathroom. The same tile I once joked looked like a 90s sitcom set. Plans were laid out like grocery lists. Tuesday dinner, Thursday work drinks, Saturday site visit. Her calendar at home said client review. I could hear her voice, casual and practiced. It ran late. Don't wait up. I remembered a night I made pot roast for just the two of us, like the early years when money was tight and we celebrated small wins. She texted mid-bite, "Need to stay." I wrapped the leftovers and told myself love is flexible. Staring at these messages, I realized flexibility had turned me into a pretzel. She wasn't improvising around work. She was orchestrating around me. A simple line connected it all. The truth existed, just never where she told me to look. I turned off every light but one and sat in the chair by the window. The street outside looked ordinary. Porch lights, a dog walker, a teenager practicing parallel parking. Normal life kept moving like a train that didn't realize someone fell off. I scrolled until my thumb hurt. At some point I noticed the dent in the armrest where I always rest my elbow during Sunday football. Funny what you cling to when the big things fall apart. A chair you've had for years, a mug with a chipped handle, a schedule that whispers tomorrow will be regular. I let the messages run together until they blurred, then backtracked and read them one by one, slower. I wanted the story to change on a second reading, like a movie with an alternate ending. It didn't. I set the phone face down. The room felt too small and somehow too empty. I took a breath, counted to 10, and felt nothing move. There's a sentence that landed in my head and wouldn't leave, clear as if someone else said it out loud. My whole life had been rewritten without my consent. It sounded dramatic and true at the same time. I pictured our marriage as a book I thought I knew by heart. Turns out there were pages I never saw, chapters drafted in secret, footnotes that changed the meaning of everything. I thought about the last family barbecue, me at the grill while she texted on the deck, laughing at something I didn't hear. I thought about the hotel points I proudly saved for a vacation we never took. Tiny edits, tiny erasures. When trust breaks, it doesn't shatter like glass. It peels like paint. Quiet, layered, revealing colors you never chose. I stood to pour water and missed the glass. The spill crawled across the counter like a map. I wiped it up twice because once didn't feel like enough to clean anything. I expected anger to rush in like a storm. What came was a strange hollow, the kind you notice in a house after kids move out. Same rooms, new echo. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't pace. I listened to the dishwasher finish its cycle and wondered how a machine could complete something I couldn't. I tried on a few reactions in my head. Confront now, pack a bag, call a friend. but each one felt like talking with a mouth numbed at the dentist. Nothing landed. I thought about my father's advice. Don't make big decisions when you're hungry, tired, or furious. I wasn't hungry, I wasn't tired, and somehow I wasn't furious. I was empty in a way that made noise unnecessary. I set the phone on the table like evidence and watched the clock tick. The second hand moved, which meant I was still here. When the shower turned off upstairs, I finally felt something. The smallest click of resolve. When the shower stopped, I pictured 100 versions of the conversation. Lights on, evidence on the table, her face moving through denial to anger to tears. I could hear the lines before they happened. I also heard my father, the one who fixed tractors and marriages. Don't swing a hammer when a wrench will do. I rinsed my glass, dried it twice, and felt my pulse settle just enough to think. Confrontation right now would be fireworks, bright, loud, and gone by morning. What I wanted was not a scene, it was a consequence, something that didn't burn out. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, screen down, cord straight, like a crime show where the detective refuses to disturb the room. When she came downstairs, I asked if she wanted tea. She said she was tired. I said me too. We turned off the lights. In the dark, I chose my first move. Not tonight. Morning brought the kind of clarity you get after a storm. Branches everywhere, but the sky is clean. I made coffee and wrote a list on a sticky note I didn't plan to keep. No yelling, no public drama, no lies from me. She already had someone to break promises. I wouldn't join that team. If I wanted her to understand what she'd done, rage wouldn't do it. Rage lets people play the victim. Calm makes them face the mirror. I thought about dignity, a word you don't appreciate until you feel it slip. Dignity is staying seated when every nerve tells you to stand up and shout. It's choosing your tone like you choose your clothes before a funeral. Sober, deliberate. I wasn't going to destroy anything. I wanted to demonstrate something. You don't get to rewrite a marriage and keep the same ending. I pocketed the note, finished my coffee, and knew the plan needed one more piece. I opened my laptop and searched his name. Not a deep investigation, just the kind of scroll anyone over 40 has learned to do while waiting for the kettle to boil. There he was. Mark, project lead, smiling in conference photos like a man who thought the world was clapping. Company posts, a charity 5K, a shot with coworkers holding plastic medals. Comments from friends, nothing remarkable. Then I looked for anything tagged with him outside of work. A backyard barbecue, a holiday tree with a crooked star, a picture of him in a rented tux, not recent but not ancient. The kind of life that hums, errands, plans, small jokes under photos. I wasn't hunting for dirt. I was looking for context. People don't cheat into a vacuum. They cheat into a world. And then I saw her, tagged in a photo from a neighborhood dinner. The caption called her Lydia. The last piece slid into place. This wasn't just my story anymore. I clicked her name. Lydia's page wasn't a diary. It was a bulletin board for ordinary days. A snapshot of takeout on a Friday night. A pair of walking shoes by the door. A photo on a porch swing with a paperback in her lap. Sunlight on her knees. I lingered there longer than I expected. There's a particular ache in recognizing yourself in a stranger. The tidy porch, the little routines, the belief that normal is safe. I imagined the conversation she thought she'd have tonight. What to stream, whether the laundry could wait. Small talk that keeps a house breathing. I didn't know her opinions, her politics, her favorite anything. I just knew she hadn't consented to this either. The anger I couldn't feel last night turned into something steadier. Duty. If the roles were reversed, I'd want a call. I sat back, stared at the ceiling, and tested the thought aloud. Maybe she deserves to know. It didn't sound cruel. It sounded fair. I drafted 3 versions. The first was blunt. The second was too soft. The third was plain. Hi, Lydia. This is Ethan. I believe our spouses have been spending time together outside of work. I'm not looking for drama. If you'd like to talk, I can share what I found. I read it like a contract. No extra words, no threats. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I thought about calling instead, but a message felt like a door she could choose to open. Choice matters when everything else has been taken. I checked the time. Late afternoon, not a moment that screams emergency. I added, coffee, public place, your call. then deleted, public place. It sounded like I was planning a sting. I hit send. The screen did that small, ordinary thing a screen does. It returned to the inbox like nothing had changed. Then the 3 dots appeared under her name, pulsing. My plan had a heartbeat. I stared at the message I'd drafted and sent it exactly as written. Hi, Lydia. Maybe we should talk. I expected to feel slick or sneaky. I didn't. It felt like putting on a seatbelt after you've already hit the brakes. Late, but necessary. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter where so many regular evenings had started, chopping onions, arguing gently about the thermostat, laughing at a rerun we'd both seen twice. The ordinary felt like a dare. I washed a plate that was already clean, dried it like that would tidy my head. I checked the phone. Nothing. I told myself grown-ups can wait. Then I remembered how I used to wait for my dad to come home from late shifts, listening for his boots in the mudroom, and realized I was doing the same thing now, only for a different kind of rescue. A buzz landed on the counter. Her name lit the screen. The reply was short, but it was yes. Thank you for reaching out. I've had a feeling. When and where. No punctuation drama, no emojis, just a clean sentence from a steady hand. I typed back a time that wasn't too soon or too far. Tomorrow, late afternoon. A coffee shop we both could find without effort. The kind of place where retirees play chess and teenagers study with headphones on. She sent a thumbs up. Simple, adult, brave. Part of me wanted to unload everything right then, like a man dropping heavy groceries on the counter. But you don't do that to strangers. You don't do that to yourself. I told her I'd bring what I found. She wrote, okay. I put the phone away and felt the house widen a little, like a window had opened. Grace texted 5 minutes later. Running late. I wrote back, no problem, and meant it. Tomorrow had a shape now. After weeks of guessing, there would be a chair, a table, and the truth between us. The coffee shop was the kind that smells like cinnamon year-round. Low ceilings, soft light, a chalkboard menu with prices that hadn't kept up with rent. I arrived early, older habit, and picked a table near the window. I didn't sit with my back to the door. I wanted to see her walk in, to give both of us the courtesy of no surprises. When Lydia entered, she looked exactly like her pictures and nothing like them. Realer, smaller, somehow stronger. She wore a simple sweater and the expression of someone who's been keeping a house upright through weather. We said hello like neighbors meeting over a fence. No dramatic hugs, no accusations. I offered to get her tea. She nodded, asked for honey. I remembered how my mother took honey for a sore throat and filed it under human details that make people real. We sat. The silence didn't strain. It settled. I put my phone on the table, screen down. I'm ready when you are, she said. I started with context, not shock. I didn't go looking, I said. My phone died. I borrowed hers. A message popped up. Lydia nodded like she'd already done the same math. I unlocked the thread and slid the phone across the table, not pushing it like a weapon, placing it like a document 2 adults would read. She pulled her glasses from her bag and put them on, a move I recognized from my own mornings. She scrolled. The cafe noise faded under the small friction of her finger on glass. At a photo in the hotel mirror, she blinked once, long. At a joke about he'll never find out, she let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. We didn't talk over the words. We let them stand there and be guilty all by themselves. I pointed to dates and times that matched her calendar. She took a breath and said, I told myself it was work. I nodded. I told myself the same. There's a moment you can feel but not capture, when understanding arrives and takes the strength with it. Lydia's face didn't crumble. It drained. Not pity, not panic, just color leaving a room. She set the phone down carefully, the way you return a borrowed item you never wanted. Her tea had gone cool. She wrapped both hands around the cup anyway. How long? She asked. I told her what I knew and, more importantly, what I didn't. She closed her eyes like someone standing in front of a wave, choosing to take it. Okay, she said, and the word carried years. I waited for anger, for strategies, for courtroom talk. What came first was smaller and somehow larger. Thank you. Gratitude, in a scene like this, is its own kind of courage. I said, "I'm sorry." We sat with that, two adults at a small table, finishing a hard truth. Then she opened her eyes, steadier now. "So," she said, "what do we do with it?" We let the facts sit between us like a third person. Cups on saucers. A napkin folded, unfolded. Lydia spoke first, not dramatic, just steady. "He told me it was just work." The line hung there, familiar as a pothole we both kept hitting. I nodded. She said the same. We didn't rush to fill the quiet. Older adults know the value of not talking yourself into a corner. I watched steam drift off her tea and remembered my mother saying, "When water cools, flavor settles." Maybe that's true for truth too. Lydia glanced at the door like she was measuring whether to leave the room or stay in the moment. She stayed. "I'm not crazy, right?" she asked. "No," I said. "You're married." That got the smallest smile, sad, but real. The first honest sentence in days, maybe months, had finally been spoken out loud. We weren't fixing our marriages, we were naming what broke, and naming it made the ground stop tilting. We started comparing notes the way neighbors compare storm damage. Your fence, my roof. Not to compete, but to map the hit. Her timeline matched mine more often than not. Tuesday dinners, Thursday drinks, the same hotel that used to be ours. I told her I wasn't looking to burn the house down, just to stop pretending it wasn't on fire. She nodded. "I don't want a scene," she said. "I want clarity." That word rang true for both of us. I shared my rule. No yelling, no lies, no public mess. She added one. No ambush that puts us in legal trouble. "We're adults," she said. The practical tone calmed me. We agreed to sleep on any big move, the way you do before signing papers or buying a car. Then we looked at each other and realized sleep wasn't coming soon. "Next step?" Lydia asked. I took a breath and said it. "Let's let them see what their lies actually look like." When I said it, I expected pushback. Instead, Lydia exhaled through her nose and almost laughed, the kind of laugh you hear at a wake, thin but necessary. "You mean, together?" she asked. "Together," I said. Not to perform, not to trade humiliation for humiliation, but to put a mirror where they couldn't avoid it. I explained the logic the way my father would fix a busted hinge, slow, careful, no stripped screws. If we yell, they'll focus on our volume. If we're calm, they'll have to face the facts. Lydia stared into her cup like it could answer for her. "I hate drama," she said. "Me too," I said, and meant it. We weren't plotting a spectacle, we were planning a demonstration. She traced the rim of her mug once, twice, then looked up. "I can do calm," she said. It sounded like a promise to herself more than to me. The idea didn't feel wicked. It felt like guardrails on a bad road. We moved to logistics the way grown-ups do. Time, place, safety, our own limits. "No surprises for us," Lydia said. "Only for them." We picked their favorite restaurant, the one with the dark wood and the host who greets regulars by name. Familiar territory would do half the work. I'd make the reservation for two. We'd arrive dressed for a date, not a duel. No touching beyond what two new friends could own. No baiting lines, no alcohol past one drink. We keep our judgment. If they spotted us early, we'd stay put and let timing carry the weight. I could feel my heartbeat in my thumb, steady for the first time in days. "Why there?" she asked, one last check. "Because that's where their story pretends to be respectable," I said. "Let's give the lie back where it was borrowed." Lydia considered that, then nodded. We didn't shake hands. We didn't need to. Agreement settled over the table like a quiet tablecloth. She tested the words with a half smile, as if trying on a coat. "You want me to be your date?" It sounded absurd and exactly right. "Yes," I said. "Not to hurt them. To remind ourselves we're not powerless." She looked out the window at a couple crossing the street, midlife, walking in step, grocery bags swinging between them. I could see the ache register and then move through. "Okay," she said. "I'll be your date." The sentence felt almost light, like a window finally cracked open in a stale room. We set the night, 1 week out, enough time to steady nerves, not enough to talk ourselves out of it. I paid for the tea, She protested. I insisted in the polite way people our age still use. At the door, we paused like neighbors after borrowing a ladder. "Thank you," she said, "for telling me." "Thank you," I answered. We stepped into the cool evening, two strangers who'd just agreed on courage. I called the restaurant they love, the one with dark wood, soft lamps, and a host who remembers regulars by name. I asked for a table for 4, not 2, 4. It sounded odd, but it solved a problem. A 4 top near their usual corner would put us in their line of sight without forcing contact. The host offered a time I knew they liked, early enough for decent parking, late enough for a second glass of wine. I said yes and gave my name clearly, the way you spell it to a pharmacist. I pictured the room, the banquette they prefer, the bar's slow clink, the steady hum that hides private words. I've been married long enough to know restaurants hold stories, birthdays, reconciliations, quiet defeats. This one would hold ours. Before hanging up, I confirmed the note. "Quiet table if possible." He said, "Of course." I thanked him, then stared at my phone a few seconds longer. The plan had a seat. Now it needed a night. We picked the exact evening with the care you use when scheduling a medical scan. No rushing, no guessing. I checked Grace's shared calendar and the gaps in Mark's public photos, the way older adults read between lines without needing an app. Thursday fit their rhythm. Not Friday, too noisy. Not Saturday, too crowded. Thursday meant routine, and routine makes people careless. I triangulated the window, her client dinner, his site visit. We wouldn't tail them. We'd just be where they'd already planned to be. Lydia texted, "Are you sure?" I wrote back, "I don't want coincidence. I want clarity." She sent, "Then Thursday." I called the restaurant to confirm and asked casually whether they still carried that Oregon Pinot, something familiar to keep my hands steady. After I hung up, I drove the route once, like an old habit before a job interview. Where to park, which door, how the light falls near the host stand. Preparation doesn't guarantee control. It strengthens your spine. The night came like weather you've seen on the forecast all week. I ironed a white shirt I save for funerals and interviews, the kind that behaves when you ask it to. I chose a navy suit that still fits if I don't breathe too deeply. My wedding ring caught the mirror light, and for a second I saw a younger me, sleeves rolled, painting the first house. I put on the watch my father left me, quiet, dependable, honest about time. Lydia texted a photo of the edge of a black dress, no face, no pose, just fabric that said, "We're not here to perform." She asked, "Too much?" I replied, "It says steady. Shoes polished, lint roller, backup handkerchief in the inner pocket." Older men know these rituals aren't vanity, they're rails for shaky moments. I took one last look around the quiet kitchen. The dishwasher was off. The rooms were still. I locked the door and felt my nerves line up like buttons. Driving over, I rehearsed the only line that mattered. It wasn't about hurting them. It was about reclaiming control. I said it out loud in the car, the way you test a sentence for cracks. The steering wheel felt steady under my hands. I pictured the wrong version of the night. Raised voices, security called, neighbors whispering. That's not our story. Our story is 2 adults walking through a room like they belong there, because they do. My rule list rode shotgun. No alcohol past 1, no baiting, no speeches. If the night gave us silence, we'd let silence work. I pulled into the lot and parked under a light the way my mother told me to when I first got a license. Safety isn't drama. It's basic math. Lydia's car turned in right after mine. She stepped out, smoothed her dress, and breathed once, deep and even. I said, "You okay?" She answered, "I'm choosing to be." That was enough. We went in. The host stand glowed like a small stage. I gave my name. He nodded with the ease of someone who's done this 1,000 times. As he reached for menus, the door opened behind us. I didn't turn. In the polished metal of the coat rack, I caught the reflection of 4 faces. Ours, calm. Theirs, mid-laugh, mid-stride. The room settled into its evening rhythm. Clink, low talk, a violin track that no one really hears. The host led us toward the far wall, past their corner table. Timing did the work. Lydia and I walked as if we'd been here before, which, separately, we had. I saw Grace's fork pause midair. Mark's hand cooled on the linen. We didn't stop. We didn't stare. We took our four top two tables away, close enough for truth, far enough for dignity. When the menus opened, they sounded louder than paper should. The waiter approached their table first and smiled like he knew them. That was the point. The restaurant ran on soft noises, the clink of glass, the scrape of a chair, the hush of a violin no one named. Lydia and I sat like any other pair on a weeknight, reading menus we didn't need. I lifted my water. She lifted hers. The glasses touched with a sound that felt cleaner than a toast. I didn't have to scan the room. Years of marriage had trained my eyes to know where she'd sit, what she'd order, how she'd lean. I looked up and there they were, caught mid-laugh, like a photo that forgot to stop moving. Grace's smile faltered first, then Mark's. A line of understanding moved from their table to ours, straight as a string pulled tight. The room didn't change temperature, but it felt colder. I set my glass down and let the moment breathe. You don't chase a hook you've already set, you wait. Across the room, their laughter didn't return. Ours wasn't needed. The gaze held. That was enough. Grace turned a shade I recognized from flu seasons and funerals, color leaving without permission. Mark's hand, casual a second ago, became a trespass he couldn't explain. He pulled it back, quick and clumsy, as if the linen had burned him. I watched without tilting my head, the way older men watch a game they've seen 100 times, quiet, reading the field. Grace reached for her napkin and missed it. Her fingers found the table edge instead. Mark tried for a grin built in a mirror, not in a life. It didn't hold. I glanced at the bread plate as if it were the most interesting thing in the room. Lydia followed my lead, smoothing a crease from her napkin that wasn't there. Control isn't a roar, it's a posture. I could feel their minds racing through alibis we'd already outpaced. Around us, forks kept moving. Conversations continued. But at their table, gravity got mean. The space between their plates felt like an ocean. We didn't need theatrics, only placement. Lydia leaned in just enough for her voice to travel the short distance between tables without crossing into a scene. "You were right, Ethan," she said, calm as weather. "Perfect place for a first date." It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. The words settled into the room like a card slid across felt. Face up. Grace blinked. Mark shifted in his seat and reached for his glass, then thought better of giving his hands anything to do. I kept my eyes on Lydia like she'd said something about the specials. The point wasn't to stab, it was to let the truth sit under the lights. A couple at the bar glanced over and turned back to their burgers, sensing a story without wanting to star in it. Lydia rested her hand lightly near mine. Not touch, not bait, just presence. Across the room, Grace's mouth opened and closed without sound. The first date had spoken. Timing is a kind of mercy. The waiter drifted to their table with the soft confidence of a man who knows regulars by name. He carried 2 wine lists and the power of routine. "Your usual wine, Mr. Lewis?" he asked, cheerful and precise. The sentence landed like a gavel. You could feel the verdict ripple, through Mark's shoulders, through Grace's eyes, through the part of the room tuned to civility. "Actually," Mark started, but language had left him. The waiter, bless him, stood waiting in the clean space where orders usually go. Lydia didn't look over. I didn't either. I let the moment do the work we came for. People think consequences arrive with sirens. Most arrive with a smile and a notepad. Grace reached for her water and knocked the straw. It wobbled like a metronome set too fast. The waiter blinked, then pivoted to another table with professional grace. The damage was done. The label on the bottle might as well have read, "Truth." Grace pushed back her chair, small sound, big meaning, and crossed the distance like a person walking through rain that just started. "Ethan," she said, voice thin. "What is this?" I kept my tone where I'd promised myself it would live. Steady. "A double date," I said. "You didn't think you were the only ones allowed one, did you?" The words weren't fireworks. They were a level held against a crooked frame. Lydia looked at Mark the way a teacher looks at a student who copied the wrong answer twice. "Enjoy your meal," she said. "You'll need the energy for the explanations later." We didn't stand right away. We gave the silence a full minute because adults know silence teaches faster than speeches. Then I placed a bill beside the water, enough to pay for what we didn't eat. I rose. Lydia rose. We walked past their table without brushing the air. Behind us, a fork slipped from a hand and met the floor. Grace stood so fast her chair complained. "Ethan, what is this?" Her voice had that thin edge I've heard at hospital desks and airport counters, polite words stretched over panic. I didn't rise to meet it. "Just consequences," I said, quiet enough to travel only as far as it needed to. "Older men know volume isn't power, steadiness is." She searched my face for a version of me she could still reason with. I kept my hands on the table, palms down, like a man anchoring a map. "We can talk later," she said, eyes darting to the other diners. Later had done the work for months. Later was where truth went to nap. I held her gaze and let the silence answer. She blinked first. It wasn't triumph. It was confirmation. Mark shifted in his seat, ready to rescue the scene with a lie we'd already outgrown. "Don't," I said, not unkind. He closed his mouth. The room heard the click. Consequences isn't a big word, but it's heavy when it lands where denial used to live. Grace reached for the back of her chair like a person steadying after stepping off a moving sidewalk. "We didn't mean," she started, "but meaning is a poor accountant. Outcomes balance the books." I thought about all the times I'd said, "It's fine," to keep the peace. At holidays, at work, in lines that move too slow. There's a cost to always smoothing the water. You forget what real stillness feels like. "We'll discuss this at home," she whispered, the way parents do when kids are watching. I remembered the afternoons we spent teaching our nephew to apologize without excuses. "Own it," we'd say. Funny how adults need the same lesson, only with quieter voices and better shoes. "I am discussing it," I said. "Here." Lydia didn't add anything. She didn't need to. The word hung between all four of us, perfectly balanced, perfectly sharp. You never realize how loud silverware is until a room tries to pretend it isn't listening. A spoon clinked, too bright. Somewhere behind us, a knife met the plate and squealed. The couple at the bar pretended to compare specials with the devotion of actors in a school play. A waiter cleared a table with extra care, each glass placed like crystal in a church. I didn't look around for allies. I didn't need an audience. But shame likes company, and this room was full. Grace's fingers worked the edge of her napkin into a rope. Mark lifted his menu and discovered it couldn't cover a face. I've been to enough retirement parties and Little League banquets to recognize a shift in air when the story changes. It changed. Not in a headline way. In the small way that makes people sit up straighter and chew slower. Grace tried for a smile that asked the evening to reset. It didn't. A teaspoon fell. No one laughed. Lydia turned her head, not her body. "Enjoy your meal," she told Mark, voice even as a level. "You'll need the energy to explain later." It wasn't a threat. It was a schedule. The line removed the last safe corner from the table. Mark swallowed, Adam's apple climbing like a man trying stairs in a house he doesn't own. Grace reached for the water and missed the straw again. The waiter hovered at a polite distance, sensing a weather system he couldn't fix with refills. I felt the odd relief that comes when the difficult thing has finally spoken. For months, the truth had been an unpaid bill. Now it was stamped and sent. Lydia placed her napkin neatly by her plate, a small ritual of closure that older adults understand. Fold the thing you can, when the big thing won't fold. She stood. I followed. Neither of us touched our chairs. We didn't need to. The sentence had already pushed them back. We walked out without hurry, the way you leave a church after a hard sermon, quiet, measured, aware that echoes follow. The whispers rose behind us, soft as paper being passed down a row. Nobody said our names. They didn't have to. The door gave that modest restaurant sigh as it closed, a sound I'll probably hear in my sleep. Outside, the night felt honest. Cool air, streetlights, a couple waiting for their rides and pretending not to notice us. Lydia breathed in like a swimmer taking the first clean lungful after the wall. "You okay?" I asked. "Better," she said, and looked it. In the glass, our reflections stood where theirs had been 5 minutes earlier, only steadier. I thought about every PTA meeting and work review where I'd chosen diplomacy over clarity. Tonight had been the opposite, clarity over comfort. I walked her to her car. "Thank you," she said again, "not for the plan, for the proof." We didn't hug. We didn't need to. We picked a small bar with a quiet back corner, low lights, a bartender old enough to know when not to ask questions. I ordered 2 whiskeys neat, the kind that doesn't pretend to be anything but what it is. The first sip burned, then settled, like a good truth. Lydia and I didn't jump into a post-game breakdown. Older adults learn to let the dust land before you name the tracks. I watched the ice sweat in a glass at the next table and thought of all the times I'd tried to chill a feeling that needed heat. We sat there with our shoulders relaxed and our hands still. No rehearsal, no what-ifs. Just the strange quiet that follows doing the hard thing you promised yourself you'd do. I glanced at the door out of habit and didn't expect anyone to walk in. For the first time in weeks, I didn't brace. The bartender wiped the counter, nodded once our way, and left us to the calm we earned. Lydia turned her glass slowly, watching the amber climb and fall. "Do you think they'll ever get it?" she asked. Not angry, not hopeful, just tired in a way that tells the truth. I thought about classrooms and boardrooms and every place adults learn late. "Maybe," I said, "but it doesn't matter." I meant it. Understanding can't be demanded like a refund. It arrives or it doesn't, on its own schedule. What we did tonight wasn't a lesson for them. It was a line for us. Lydia nodded like she'd been waiting to hear that from someone who didn't need to win. We traded small pieces of ourselves, jobs, siblings, the way grief sneaks in around holidays. Nothing intimate, everything honest. The jukebox coughed up an old jazz standard from the year my father bought his first truck. I remembered him saying, "You can't fix people, you can fix your posture." I straightened in my chair without thinking. Lydia noticed and smiled. The question had found its answer. Maybe can be a dodge, but tonight it felt like open air. Maybe means I don't have to carry their homework or grade their tests. I told Lydia that. She laughed, soft and surprised, the sound a person makes when a knot finally loosens. We talked about routines that keep older folks sane, lists on the fridge, Sunday calls, the way a morning walk can reset a bad week. I admitted I'd been clinging to routine like a life raft with a slow leak. "It kept me floating," I said, "but it didn't get me home." She understood. We toasted to small things that hold: good shoes, reliable cars, neighbors who wave. The second sip went down easier than the first. Not sweeter, truer. I checked my phone on the bar, face down, not to hide anything, just to prove to myself I could let it sit. A text from Grace would come, or it wouldn't. Either way, my answer already lived in me. The bar's light was that friendly amber you see in photos from decades ago, the kind that forgives and flatters. A trumpet from the speakers had a wobble, like it had been recorded on a night with rain. I've sat in louder rooms, wedding receptions, retirement dinners, holiday miles of small talk. This wasn't loud. It was right-sized. Lydia told me her father keeps spare flashlights in every room, for when the power goes quick. I said mine kept batteries in a coffee can in the garage, labeled in marker like a map for future him. We laughed at the way dads get practical when life goes sideways. The music faded between tracks, and the room exhaled with it. I realized I hadn't measured a minute since we sat down. No clocks in my head, no scoreboard, just the slow return of a steady heart. Lydia lifted her glass and said, "To grown-up choices." I lifted mine. The clink was small and perfect. On the drive home, I said it out loud so I'd hear it with my own ears. That night wasn't revenge. It was closure. Revenge wants a crowd. Closure is fine with the empty passenger seat. I thought of all the times I'd chosen peace to avoid conflict, and how different it feels to choose peace after the conflict has told the truth. The difference is posture. I wasn't slumped. I was upright. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rear view, older than the day I married, steadier than last week. The sentence kept its shape. I took back my dignity. That's all. When I parked, the porch light I'd set on a timer greeted me like a reasonable friend. Inside, I rinsed a single glass, set it upside down, and listened to the quiet as if it were a song I used to love. My phone buzzed in the other room. I let it. The message could wait. My peace could not. A week passed like a slow bruise. less tender, still visible. I filled the days the way men my age do, fixed a leaky faucet, mailed a birthday card, walked the neighborhood loop where the maples lean in like old friends. Late Saturday, the doorbell rang. I knew the rhythm before I saw the face. Grace stood there with eyes that looked like she hadn't slept on purpose. She asked if we could talk. I stepped back from the threshold the way you do for deliveries. Space given, not an invitation. She came in small, shoulders rounded, holding her phone like a passport she couldn't use. The house felt cleaner than usual, as if order could defend me. She started to cry the way adults cry, quiet, controlled, embarrassed by it. I handed her a tissue from the box on the side table, the one we keep for allergies and hard calls. "I'm listening," I said, not rescuing, not reliving, listening. The room settled to hear her. She talked fast, like someone chasing a train that already left. "It's over with Mark," she said. I ended it. She listed proof, deleted threads, blocked numbers, a message to HR about boundaries, words that sounded like they belonged in a seminar. She said she wanted counseling. She said she remembered us, the first apartment with the oven that ran hot, the cheaper wine we pretended was better, the lawn chairs we used as a dining set for 3 months. Nostalgia arrived like a salesman with a good suit. I didn't interrupt. I noted details the way I used to in staff meetings, dates, actions, what was missing. She said, "I made a mistake," as if the story had one mistake and not a string of choices. She asked if we could try. The sentence landed with a weight it didn't used to have. Try used to mean pick a new movie. Now it sounded like rebuilding a bridge in a flood. I let the words sit. I've learned that grown men can do 2 hard things at once: listen carefully and refuse to fix. So I listened. I let silence carry the parts she couldn't. I remembered a marriage class at church where the facilitator said, "Reflect back, don't rescue." I asked one question at a time. When did it start? What did you tell yourself to make it okay? She answered honestly enough to sting us both. Every now and then she reached for my hand and stopped halfway, like touching a hot pan she used to own. I noticed the picture frames on the mantel, nieces, nephews, a hiking trail in Utah, and wondered how many smiles are time-stamped by what we didn't know then. She said she'd do anything. I believed she meant it in this moment. The trouble with moments is they end. I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water, and came back. She thanked me like I'd done something bigger. I hadn't. I was just steady. I set my glass down, felt the ring of moisture it left, and knew the answer before I spoke it. "Grace," I said, and waited for my voice to find the right height. "You broke something you can't fix." The sentence wasn't a weapon. It was a measurement. Her shoulders sagged, the way drywall bows when water gets behind it. You don't see the damage until you do. She reached for reasons: childhood wounds, pressure at work, the way we drifted. Reasons explain, they don't repair. I told her I didn't hate her, which surprised both of us. Hate is heavy. I'd put it down. "I'm going to be okay," I said, realizing it as I said it. "You need to figure out you're okay without me." She covered her mouth and nodded like a person trying not to be sick. The room didn't spin. It stilled. Some words bounced in return. This one did not. It went out, settled, and made the furniture honest. She cried the kind of tears that make you want to hand someone a plan. I didn't. I walked her to the entryway where the floor still shows a scratch from moving day, a reminder that even good starts leave marks. She asked if we could talk again next week. I said we could talk about logistics, keys, accounts, the calendar that used to keep us in step. She nodded, swallowed hard, and put on her coat like armor that didn't fit. At the door, she turned as if the right sentence might still arrive and change the ending. None came. I opened it. Cool air, porch light, the ordinary world waiting the way it always does. She stepped out. I said her name once, not as a plea, just as witness that this happened. Then I closed the door. The latch clicked with a small finality that felt larger than it sounded. I leaned my forehead against the wood, breathed, and realized I didn't need to lock it. I started walking by the river after work, the way men my age start walking when the doctor says, "You need better numbers," and life quietly agrees. The maple leaves were late gold, the kind that crunch without bragging. Couples passed with dogs that didn't pull, and I envied the leash more than I should have. The water moved like a steady breath. I traced the same stretch every evening, parking lot to footbridge to the bench with a plaque for a veteran named Howard. I didn't listen to podcasts. I let the river do the talking. The hurt didn't shout anymore. It hummed. I counted steps, watched my breath, and felt the simple win of a body doing what it's supposed to. When wind lifted the leaves and set them down in new places, I understood something small and useful. You don't control the gust, only the pace you keep. I touched Howard's plaque, said thanks to a stranger, and kept walking. I used to picture revenge like fireworks, loud, bright, satisfying. On the river path, I learned it's closer to a dimmer switch. I thought revenge would feel better. It didn't. It just felt quiet. The kind of quiet that sits with you at breakfast while the coffee cools. I stood on the footbridge and watched a leaf spin in a small whirlpool, steady but not stuck. That felt right. I remembered the restaurant, the look on their faces, the waiter's clean question. Power visited that night, then left. What stayed was something smaller and stronger, the ability to choose my next sentence, my next step, my next tone. I didn't need the last word. I needed the right one. On the walk back to the car, I passed a father showing his kid how to skip a stone, flat and easy, not hard. The rock hopped twice, then sank. The kid laughed anyway. That's when I realized quiet isn't empty. It's room. I didn't keep in touch with Lydia, not out of coldness, out of respect. Some people enter your life like a tow truck, essential when you're in the ditch, not meant to lead the parade. Still, I thought about her on the river path. I hoped she was sleeping better, eating real meals, not living on coffee and nerves. I imagined her sorting through drawers the way adults do after impact. Old chargers, birthday cards with $5 bills still inside, tape measures that wander. We had shared a war room for a short while, then returned to separate cities of repair. Once I saw a woman in a black coat she might have owned, and I almost waved. I didn't. Instead, I wished her the kind of ordinary day that holds, laundry done by 9, a good song on the drive, a parking spot that appears when you need it. There's a decency in letting a chapter close without adding a footnote. I let it close. Being alone used to mean failure to me, like an empty chair at Thanksgiving. Now it meant a kitchen that sounded like itself. I relearned small things, cooking for one without pretending I had company, turning on a lamp before sunset so the rooms didn't feel surprised by dark, leaving the phone in another room on purpose. I made Saturday lists and finished half, which is adult success. I dusted the top of the fridge and felt oddly proud. I took a box to the thrift store and didn't narrate it to anyone. At night, I read until the page stopped arguing with my eyes. I missed the easy parts of marriage, inside jokes, a hand finding yours during bad TV, but I didn't miss the edge. There's a moment when you realize you laugh out loud alone again. Mine came at a commercial with a dog wearing shoes. I laughed, out loud, no witness, and believed it. I was building a life, not a waiting room. On a cool evening, I stood at the river's bend and finally said it clean. The real revenge wasn't destruction. It was peace. Not the peace of pretending, holiday photos with tight smiles, careful posts. The peace of a room that doesn't require acting. I thought about control, how I once mistook it for gripping harder. Control turned out to be gentler, choosing a response that doesn't cost me myself. I can't edit the pages already written. I can decide how the next chapter reads. On the way back, I passed the bench again and sat a minute longer than usual. The streetlights flicked on, one by one, like they'd been waiting for my cue. I texted a friend I hadn't seen in years and said, "Coffee this week?" He wrote back, "Name the place." I smiled at the phone, slid it into my pocket, and felt the evening settle where panic used to live. Peace didn't announce itself. It took a chair and stayed. Moving wasn't dramatic. It was a stack of medium boxes and a Sharpie that kept losing its cap. I labeled things the way older adults learn to: kitchen, winter coats, photos, then added one called Let Go. The new place isn't bigger, it's easier. No room for furniture that argued with the walls. I cleared the junk drawer and found 3 tape measures, 4 batteries that might still live, and a vacation brochure we never booked. I took a load to the thrift store and didn't explain it to the volunteer. She'd seen the story 100 times. I forwarded the mail, changed the power bill, and texted the one neighbor who always brought the trash bin back from the curb. Thank you. Really. The last night in the old house, I walked each room and touched the door frames like they were people. Living room, bedroom, the hallway where we once laughed so hard we had to sit down. Then I set the keys on the counter and didn't take them back. In the new place, sleep arrived like an old dog, circling, testing, then settling at my feet. Some nights I still saw Grace, not in Technicolor drama, just in ordinary scenes, her pouring coffee, her tying a shoe, her laughing at a joke I can't hear. The dreams used to wake me like alarms. Now they land softer. I wake up, name the feeling, and it leaves on its own. I keep a glass of water on the nightstand and a notebook I mostly don't use. The doctor once called it sleep hygiene, which sounds like flossing, and maybe that's the point. Small habits that don't need applause. On Sundays, I sit in a back pew and let the music do more talking than the sermon. On Wednesdays, I buy groceries for one without pretending I forgot to invite someone. The heart learns its roots again. The past knocks less often. When it does, I answer like a decent host, and I don't offer a chair. I've stopped trying to edit what happened. You can't control betrayal, but you can control what it turns you into. That's the line I carry in my wallet like an emergency contact. I say it when a song from that year finds me in the produce aisle, when a friend asks for the short version, when a quiet afternoon tries to sell me a story about failure. Control, I've learned, isn't a grip. It's a gate. I choose what comes in: decent food, a walk with a friend, work I can be proud of. I choose what stays out: self-punishment, guessing games, the urge to rehearse what I already survived. Once in a while, I drive past the river and park without getting out. I don't need the bench anymore. I like knowing it's there. Back home, I hang my coat, return my keys to the same bowl, and feel the calm I once tried to fake. The next chapter doesn't need permission. It needs me. If you've ever been betrayed, remember this: rage fades, but dignity lasts. I learned it the hard way, in the quiet after the noise. Revenge doesn't heal. Peace does. Peace is closing a door without slamming it, choosing your next sentence instead of shouting the last one, keeping your hands steady when everything else shakes. If you're looking at proof you never asked to see, hear me. You don't have to win the argument to win your life. Choose control, not over them, over yourself. Own your tone, set your pace, hold your posture, let the noise pass, keep what's yours. Dignity stays when the crowd disappears. If you're tempted to scorch the earth, ask what grows there afterward. I chose calm, and calm gave me back my name. That's my ending. Now I want yours. What would you have done? Walk in or walk away? Raise your voice or raise your standards? Tell me below, and tell it straight. Your story matters.